Greetings gamers and welcome to a very special episode today here on the Retro Raider Show. That is right, I really don't need to explain anything, right? Today we are celebrating the 30th anniversary of the iconic Streets of Rage. Of course that I was going to make this video, and I'm going to jump right into the chase. If you guys follow my channel, if you follow my work here on YouTube, you know that this is a very important franchise for me, especially the first game, the original Streets of Rage, because as you know, again, if you follow my channel, you know that this game was my gateway into gaming. This was the very first video game that I've ever played. I have plenty of videos about that, about those early memories where, you know, a good friend of my father introduced me to this series through his Mega Drive. That's why I have this cartridge right here, this beautiful compilation. This was my starting point, right? With Streets of Rage, Revenge of Shinobi, and Golden Axe. I still think that this compilation is one of the best ever in gaming history. And yeah, it was my starting point. I've also covered a lot of ROM hacks of Streets of Rage, you know, homebrew games, etc. I've also made a music cover of Yuzo Koshiro, and I can leave all of those links down below if you guys want to check it out. So yeah, today is just going to be a rambling video about Streets of Rage, about the whole franchise, and here's the deal. This game not only is important for me, it is important to a lot of people, of course. People that grew up during the early 90s, people that grew up, you know, with the Genesis and the Mega Drive, people that grew up, you know, during the arcade era, and you know, fans of brawlers and beat-em-ups. Streets of Rage legacy is not as big as other franchises, right? Like, you know, like Mario, Zelda, or even Sonic, but it is indeed one of the best video games ever made. When I made my top 10 video games of all time, Streets of Rage, my favorite one is the second game. It is my second favorite video game of all time. When this game was originally released, back in the day in Japan, 91, under the name of Bare Knuckle. If we look back in the day, you know, the Sega Genesis and the Sega Mega Drive approach was really to bring that arcade vibe into our homes, right? That 16-bit graphics era vibe into the home entertainment. That's what the Mega Drive was always about. It was really about that arcade feeling. Even though you have great games like, you know, great RPGs, but the gameplay style and the vibe was very different from the Super Nintendo, for example. So we did have better games. The Super Nintendo, graphically, it's more capable of the Mega Drive, and of course that, you know, arcade was always arcade back in the day. So if we look at games like Final Fight, for example, Final Fight by Capcom was much more impressive than the original Streets of Rage, right? Even games like, I know that a lot of people don't like this game, but you know, Last Battle, which was, I believe, the very first 16-bit beat 'em up on the Mega Drive. Those sprites are much bigger and more detailed than the original Streets of Rage. But Streets of Rage, this game right here, the very first one, is so different. It is so fun. It is that perfect combination of the 90s. Even though we're talking about early 90s, this game summarizes an era, a decade, a generation. It goes beyond gaming. It's, again, the vibe, the gameplay, of course, the music, the soundtrack, the colors, the sprites. It is really the perfect game for me. It plays good, the characters are very appealing, the gameplay is fun, it has good mechanics, great controllers, again, a great soundtrack by the master Yuzo Koshiro. You have street gangs, you have the most awesome police crew, you have techno music, you combine all this together in a beautiful system like the Mega Drive, and you have Streets of Rage. That is what Streets of Rage symbolizes for me. And of course that nostalgia plays a big part here. Even though, again, if you watch my previous videos about Streets of Rage, I only got introduced to the series in '93 when I was 5 years old. And again, I know that I'm going to repeat a little bit of the story, but I didn't have the Mega Drive for 2 years, so this was '93, so from '93 to '95, I played a lot of Mega Drive, at friends' houses. They used to lend me their Mega Drives when they were on vacations. Only later on, with the release of the PlayStation 1, that was my very first system. I also had a Saturn for a while, but that's a topic for another video. But yeah, for those initial 2 years of my early gaming days, or days as a gamer, if you will, those first steps were with the original Streets of Rage. So to summarize the first Streets of Rage game, even though it was inferior graphically with the the rivals or the other propositions that we had on the market back in the day, even though it was inferior in some aspects, in my opinion, the whole concept of the game, the whole vibe, the gameplay, the game is just more fun. I still think that the original Streets of Rage holds on pretty well, and it still stands out as one of the best beat-em-ups of all time. Moving on to Streets of Rage 2. This game, what is Streets of Rage 2 all about? Well, Streets of Rage 2 grabbed everything that was great about the original game and just turned it up 1000. The sprites were much bigger. The music was really much more, more techno, more groovy. The graphics were very, very impressive. Now here, I think that we could call it arcade perfect, even though we didn't have an arcade version of Streets of Rage. But it was so much better in lots of ways. For me personally, of course, that it is not as nostalgic, but everything is right in this game. I never did like a top video game, like 10 out of 10 top video, if you will. And I really don't like to give grades to games, but if I had to grade Streets of Rage 2, this is a 10 out of 10 game. No questions about it. Great roast of characters, even though Adam is not present. And yeah, Adam still is. Adam Hunter, my favorite character in the Streets of Rage universe. But yeah, everything was right about this game. It was a little bit more challenging, yes, but that's part of the style back in the day, brawlers, beat 'em ups, and it was such an influence game. A lot of beat 'em ups that you'll have, after Streets of Rage 2 really grabbed the or tried to replicate in some ways the vibes of this game. And back in the day, even though today it is a genre, side-scrolling beat 'em ups, even though it is a genre that kind of died, back in the day in the 90s, those were the days, those were the golden days of beat 'em ups. And if you ask me, what is the pinnacle? What is the pinnacle of this genre of gaming? Well, the pinnacle is right here. It's Streets of Rage 2. Streets of Rage 3, a game that unfortunately nowadays is expensive to get. Me, fortunately, I got this game for what? €4.50? I don't know, like 12, 13 years ago, I think. Streets of Rage 3 is kind of the black sheep of the franchise, but to be honest, I really don't understand why, because here's the thing. It is kind of a late release on the Mega Drive, it is true, but I think that the problem that most fans find in this game is that it just followed Streets of Rage 2. So let's say that it didn't add anything new per se. It's just a continuation, and there were so many good improvements, right, on Streets of Rage 2 moving from Streets of Rage 1 that there was a lot of hype for this game, and I think that gamers back then had a lot of that hype. They were expecting too much. And then the final result was kind of Streets of Rage 2.2, if you will. In my humble opinion, Streets of Rage 3 is as good as Streets of Rage 2. If I was going to grade this game, I would probably give it like a 9.9. Just because I think that the music is better on Streets of Rage 2. And maybe a little bit of the level design, but don't kid yourselves. Streets of Rage 3 still remains a great game. Like top 10 beat 'em up of all time. It could be on that list. Again, no Adam Hunter, but we got to see some more characters, more interactive levels. Again, everything is still there. The sprites, the colors, the gameplay, the music. Again, I just honestly think that it was that overhyped. But yeah, it still remains a great beat 'em up game, and a great game on this beautiful franchise. Now we move on to the last release, a game that we never thought that we're going to have, but we have it, and it's right here in this beautiful physical release, Streets of Rage 4. What do I think about Streets of Rage 4? Is as good as the original 3 games, as the Streets of Rage trilogy. Well, in some ways, it's a different game. I'm not saying that it is worse or better. In some ways, it is a different game. The most obvious difference, of course, was the art direction, right? This kind of cartoony animated graphics. Do I prefer the original graphics, 16-bit pixel art? I do. However, this art style combines really, really well with this game, with brawlers, beat 'em ups. And again, the vibe, like the magic, if you will, of Streets of Rage is still there. If you still haven't played Streets of Rage 4, this game feels, and don't kid yourselves, it is a Streets of Rage game, no questions about it. The biggest roast of characters, there's a lot of unlockables, we also have a couple of DLCs out now. They focus a lot more on the story, and that's a really cool detail, because usually in these type of games, story is not a big thing, but they really pushed the envelope with Streets of Rage 4. And in my opinion, it is a game for everybody. Everybody, you know, for fans of the genre, for old school fans of the original games, or newcomers. I mean, if you're going to start out on Streets of Rage, of course that I would advise you to start with the originals. But if this is your first take on the franchise, it's a good start. It's a good gateway in my opinion. So guys, to sum it up, this was really the video. It was just a celebration video of a franchise that literally changed my life. This game literally changed my life. I think that I wouldn't be the gamer or the person that I am today if it wasn't for Streets of Rage 1. We all have our favorite games, we all have our memories, we all have our stories, and this is mine. This cartridge, unfortunately it was not actually this one, but the cartridge exactly the same as this, and the cartridge that had Streets of Rage. It was my starting point. It was the very first video game that I've ever played, and I still play this game today with the same enthusiasm that I played, like the one that I played back in '93 when I first played Streets of Rage. So I think that this is the best way for me to end this video, guys. Happy birthday, Streets of Rage. And guys, please let me know about you, let me know down below. Tell me, share your early memories with Streets of Rage. What is your favorites in the franchise? What do you think about Streets of Rage 3? What do you think about Streets of Rage 4? And yeah, share your thoughts and your stories, your early memories with this franchise down below. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I really hope that you have enjoyed this video, and if you have the extra time, feel free to follow me on social media. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And as always, guys, take care of yourselves, take care of the gaming community, and game a lot.